Okay.
And we are about to start our first session for our second week at COP28. Our session name is Answering an Urgent Call, the role of higher education in tackle climate change. We have a very honorable speakers from the University of Pennsylvania, UN.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Shogun, and I'm a youth delegate from Thailand. And today, I'm honored to be moderating this panel with a stellar panel of amazing young leaders. So first of all, I would like to ask you guys, who are you? Please introduce yourself and what got you here and why are you passionate about climate, the climate space.
Okay, if we go one by one, I can start. My name is Arseniy Kirgizov-Barsky. I'm from BRICS Youth Energy Agency. It is a youth-led international organization that is building bridges for young people from BRICS countries to cooperate. And it's my third COP. BRICS YA has been mandated organization by Russia and South Africa and other BRICS countries to make a youth engagement program for BRICS countries at COP in climate and energy tracks. So we've been working since Glasgow in 2021, and we are happy to continue this work here in Dubai and next year, wherever it's going to be, then in Brazil. So welcome to our events at COP and on other venues.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Damilola Balogun. I'm a lawyer and a social entrepreneur. I am the founder and CEO of the Youth Sustainable Development Network, where we essentially do three things. One, advocacy and capacity building for young people as far as sustainable development is concerned. Two, we do policy recommendation looking through the generational lens. And number three, we do project implementation. We build consciousness for action, which we think is key for the next generation to thrive to achieve a prosperous world. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gamonjan Osatanon. I'm here on behalf of the Siam Society. I've published research on psycholinguistics and policy making in regards to climate change.
Hi, I'm Jasmine. I'm from Hong Kong and from Carbon Care Inner Lab. I'm youth delegate to COP28. Personally, I'm also the committee member of Hong Kong YCA, so Hong Kong Youth for Climate Actions. So what we do with CCIL, we try to get youth involved in international negotiations and get them to understand like how climate change is happening and how we can solve it as a youth. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Nala from Indonesia. I'm the founder of Green Welfare Indonesia. It's a youth organization I started when I was 15, focusing on climate education and nature-based solutions. Currently I'm in my third semester studying in Japan about environmental economics, so I'm mostly passionate about climate education and climate finance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Seems like we have a very strong and passionate group of young leaders who are advocating for climate causes. So my next question for you guys is, since today is like a theme day on land use and ocean, how do you think, right now, what is the current state of land use and ocean, and how do you think that we can progress towards the goal of the Paris Agreement or towards the goal to have better land use and ocean use?
That's a very good question because actually, apart from being at BRICS YEA, I've been also a research fellow at Kobe University in 2021 in Japan. And we've been also making a research on how global biodiversity and climate conferences shape the use of land in the Arctic, for example. And that's just one example of how the state of biodiversity and climate is globally, because in the Arctic, everything what is happening globally is happening at an accelerated scale. It's called Arctic amplification. The climate change there, global warming, is happening 3 or even 4 times at higher rates than globally. And the rise of temperatures can actually reach, by some estimates, even 10 degrees centigrade to Celsius to the end of the century. So that's really a lot. When it comes to the biodiversity and protection of environment, it's also a big problem because the environment is changing. The permafrost is thawing, and there are infrastructural objects that are being degraded due to this fact. And the thing is that global biodiversity and climate conferences like COP26 here or like COP15 on biodiversity, which was held in China and Canada last year and the year before last year, which resulted in the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, they actually achieve the goal of conserving the environment globally. Like in the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, there was a goal adopted to protect 30% of all marine and land globally. So this also applies to the Arctic, to Southeast Asia, to any other part of the world. So as a young researcher also, apart from being a young like part of the BRICS Youth Energy Agency, I can say that it is really important to push forward this agenda for conservation of nature and for more youth engagement in this process, because young people, also coming from, for example, indigenous peoples, they can really make an input into this process because young people have innovative ideas and they, as I see it from our BRICS YEA activity, they really can change these processes and really can make a difference.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the question. Just to add to what he said already. So for me, I would speak from the African perspective because I'm African and I'm Nigerian specifically. I think it is important to bear in mind the common but differentiated responsibilities towards climate change. I think it is important that I speak from the solution perspective. And so what I'm saying in essence is that we have to be able to see ourselves as solution providers, youth in this case. So as much as it is important for us to achieve the Paris Agreement, we want to achieve the 1.5. What we can do is that in order to address this thing at the grassroots, because in terms of land use, I can tell you particularly in Lagos, Nigeria, where I'm from, a lot of people that suffer from this are the indigenous people. And so to be able to ensure that they are carried along, I think young people have a role to play such that they are able to design policies such as the Paris Agreement into solutions at the grassroots. And that would be the whole essence of sustainable development, which is to leave no one behind. So I am just on the perspective that we have to take note of the different realities of different countries and different continents in addressing climate change and the role of young people in designing solutions in international policies such as the Paris Agreement. So that way we are certain that we are leaving no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you so much. From my point, I also want to expand on indigenous people. I think land use may also be tied into cultural erasure. How do we support creative migration? How do we ensure that we do not erase the culture of ethnic communities that is related to the land, that is related to the forest, that is related to the oceans? And how do we sustain their spiritual community and practices within the ecosystem of nature and biodiversity that they so value? That is my perspective, primarily.
Yeah, and I think one of the very important things, I should point out, like I also work for an ocean conservation NGO, so talking about ocean, I have a lot to say. But I think most importantly, apart from all these goals and agreements and stuff, I think it's vital for people to develop a love towards nature, because you have to get out in the nature and you see the beauty of it. And how can you not want to conserve this kind of beauty? Because our ancestors have seen it and they lived with it. And now towards our generation, we are the only generation that could save it. So I feel like with all these goals and agreements, after all, we need a lot of people to come together who loves the nature and want to protect it with all cost. Yeah, and for solution-wise, I think MBS is the key way to go. No matter is the city development or land, like better land use or better use of the ocean, the water, the resources. Actually, Coach Chakon, I went to one of her events yesterday, which she said something I will remember for a long time. MBS is not just how you develop a city and put natural elements in it. Rather, you can think about not developing as much is also an MBS, in a way, a natural way. Like just not do anything, let the nature grow is also one of the MBS. And I think that's very important to remember. Yeah.
I think all of the panelists gave really important points, but one thing is for sure is that we have the policy, we have the finance, we have the political will to conserve our oceans and lands right now. So there's no more reason for us to be doing more destructiveness towards all of the nature that the world has given to us. And we need to also remember just how important forests and oceans are as a natural carbon capture. And so I think that itself should incentivize so many countries to really work their policy and finance, especially the structural mechanism, because we have the policy, we have the finance, but we don't really have the specific mechanism and how we want to work them to protect our forests. So I think we need to connect that as well as all of the grassroots movements and community-based movements that advocate for forestry. And so once we have the grassroots and community-based work collaborate with the government and the political will side in terms of climate and policy, I think that's when we can really be able to conserve our forests, land, and of course oceans.
Thank you so much for these salient points, and I definitely think that the problem requires an interdisciplinary solution, coordinating multiple stakeholders in order to make a difference, and also focusing on the grassroots as well and local communities, making sure that they are able to still have their culture and also share, like their cultures and have the spiritual sort of means to well-being still intact. So my next question is actually maybe like a more implementation-based question. So if you have, for example, one really main suggestion for the conservation of land and ocean, what is your suggestion? The most important solution?
Yeah, so I will further elaborate on what has already been said on indigenous knowledge, because I truly believe that indigenous peoples who have been living in harmony with nature for centuries know the solution, because we just need to learn from them and need to implement something that they already know. And again, take an example from the Arctic. In the Arctic, 83% of the terrestrial wetlands are inhabited by indigenous peoples. And these are one of the most vulnerable environmental territories in the whole world, because these are actually located on permafrost and they are very susceptible to the changing climate, to rising temperatures. And of course, the environment there is also very susceptible to everything that is happening all around this region. And if we just listen to what indigenous peoples say, then I believe that we definitely can find the solution to our like main problems. We need to implement how they relate themselves to nature, how their ancestors did it before, and this is probably very important. So we need to include indigenous peoples in the decision-making process. In the Arctic, there is such not an institution, but a council, the Arctic Council, where many also Asian countries are being observers, and there indigenous peoples are permanent participants. They actually sit at one table with the governments of 8 Arctic states and offer and suggest their solutions. So this is probably something we can learn from, and on the global level, this can also be implemented. At Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, there was actually a mentioning of indigenous peoples 10 times in the text. It is not bad, but it's also important to like make the wording more clear, like what we can learn from the indigenous people exactly, what it means to implement indigenous knowledge, and what the indigenous peoples themselves think about this.
Awesome. Just to add to what you said, I think it is important to involve them in decision-making processes. So when it comes to policy formulation up to policy implementation, it is important they are carried along. And I'll just give an example. So my organization in 2021, we implemented a solution for rural farmers in Lagos. So most times they still do the traditional method of farming, and in order to ensure that we make it very much inclusive for the people at the grassroots, we designed a solution to ensure that they have access to solar-powered irrigation. So with this solution, they were definitely able to get access to maximum productivity, cut down carbon emission that they use through fossil fuel-powered irrigation. And even at the end of the day, it helped to increase their income. So it sort of made their life easier, because at the end of the day, before we implemented the solution, we involved them, we made them understand what it means and what we intend to achieve. And all of this, they followed through the whole time. The reality of this is that most times they really want to work, but they want to be sure of the solution or whatever ideas you're bringing to them. So if you're able to explain to them, you're able to involve them all through the process, they would definitely be willing to work with you. So, I mean, with this testimony, it just makes me understand that involving them and collaborating with them in solution designing is something that is very crucial. Thank you.
From my point, I think to expand on the points raised here, I think the valorization of land use and ocean use is very important in policy making, decision making. What does the value of ocean and land mean to different communities all across the country or region? For example, as an example from Thailand are fishing communities that may be women-led. So the value of the ocean to them is their ability to act upon their gender, defy gender norms, be able to engage in trade, be able to engage in crafts that are related to the local communities. So being able to recognize this distinguished or unique values that each community may or may not share across the country, across the region, in order to make an inclusive policy or a decision-making process would be very valuable to the implementation process of land use and oceans.
Thank you. And to add on to like one solution, I think technology is one of the very key solutions, because it's 2023. I believe our technology brought us to the very developed world we have right now. I believe technology can also bring us to a better connect to natural kind of world, because technology should not be only used to develop urban stuff, in my opinion. Like, how you utilize it is the key to solution, because we can always use it to better our connection to our environment, the earth we live. This is our planet. This is the only planet. There's no planet B, right? And so this technology that we have, and we have a lot of engineers, very smart people, but maybe they're not focusing on any green sector yet. But if people, they switch their mindset, and from a very early stage, let's say since their education system, they implanted that mindset in them that they should be doing something good for the environment within their career. Then if engineers, they graduate, or even other sectors, they come together, when people work together and collaborate with technology helping us, then I'm sure like it wouldn't take long for us to combat this problem successfully. Yes, thank you.
So I think one thing that we have to touch upon when it comes to just solutions of land and ocean from a civil society point of view, or just citizens in general, is the climate literacy we have on those issues in the first place. In Indonesia itself, you know, we're mostly forest-based. We're covered with so many forests, and we're an archipelago, which means that we're surrounded by oceans. But the people who are living within our country does not even know the importance or the problem in the first place. You know, the consequences of what happens when we sacrifice these forests and oceans. And so I think climate literacy is also a very fragmented area within, you know, the sphere of land, forest, and ocean in the first place. And again, you know, climate education is something that needs to be consistent. You know, we see climate education in, let's say, international schools, but we don't really see them in public schools sometimes. I mean, I was a public school student when I was in high school, but before in middle school, I was an international student, and I got more climate science education than I was when I was in my public school. So I think climate education is also right now something that is still very exclusive, and so it really does contribute to the climate literacy of the importance of so many environmental issues, not only even land and ocean. And I think that's one thing that we should touch upon on the importance.
Thank you so much for these solutions. I think these are all very important and salient points to touch on. You know, technology involving local communities and indigenous communities, having, you know, different solutions work for different communities as well, and being aware of that, as well as education. Now I want to tie in sort of, you know, what you guys have been working on, and also COP in general. It's a question about COP. How have you found this conference so far? What was one really impressionable experience that you've had from this conference? Just elucidate us, please.
That's also a good question, because this COP has been, for me personally, quite crazy, I would say, because it's an enormous venue, and for a young person, it is probably, like I'm speaking for myself, it's probably difficult to find the way to the most important events and discussions here happening at the COP, and so many events happening at the same time. Even now, like I'm having an interview there, having a panel here, and there are more events and negotiations in the other room. So it is difficult to plan everything, and I think therefore that like for a young person, such an enormous COP is quite a challenge. But at the same time, it is an opportunity, and for BRICS YEA, it has been really important to engage this COP this exact year, because this year BRICS is expanding to new countries, and young people from now Saudi Arabia, from United Arab Emirates, which is hosting COP, and from Egypt, as well as Ethiopia and Argentina are entering BRICS, And for us, it is important here at COP to build these bridges, to already make connections to new communities of young people, to already build this new cooperation format, and to unite young people together under one umbrella of BRICS by A, and what we are aiming at is exactly this. So today at 1 p.m. we have an event in the Global Decarbonization Accelerator with our Arab colleagues, where we are going to talk how like BRICS countries, these are also China and India from the Asian region, who are like working on youth engagement in different projects, including on biodiversity and nature conservation, can work together, because young people together with different backgrounds, indigenous, Asian, European, African, Latin American, they can together elaborate on all the important issues that exist here connected to climate change and biodiversity degradation, and together find a solution. So for us, it's just important to bring everyone together.
Awesome. So I think one thing that has stood out for me was when I engaged with the Minister of Energy and Infrastructure of the United Arab Emirates. So he said something, he said, it is important we work with facts and not with emotions. Because if we work with facts, we are able to think reasonably and act reasonably such that we are able to provide solutions. So I am someone who is very much passionate about action-oriented projects. So as much as we are able to talk, I think one thing that have resonated with me, especially with the statements, is the fact that we need to come from the solution perspective. No solution is too small. If you're working within your community to ensure that people there are carried along, I think that is something very awesome. If you're working at the national level, at the international level, even as having engagements such as this, it is not small. People say, yeah, we shouldn't talk, we should work. But a lot of times we also don't realize that talking itself is an action word, it's a verb. Talking is walking. So essentially, I think it's important to see ourselves as solution providers and definitely define a path as to how we want to be able to create and exchange value as far as international development is concerned. Thank you.
For me, it was being able to meet Princess Dana of Jordan. She's the president of the Petra National Heritage Trust, and it occurred after the high-level ministerial meeting on culture-based climate action. For me, it was important because I was able to witness firsthand how because Princess Dana is a cultural advocate, and I was able to then witness firsthand how if you believe that culture should be spoken at climate conferences or other intersectional conferences, then you can make it happen. So that was a very powerful moment for me.
For me, I gotta be really honest because I'm only here for week 2. So yesterday was my first day in Blue Zone. But first of all, the most impressive things for me, I was shocked because the venue is huge, like way bigger than I thought. And all these architecture is actually impressive. But when it comes to like the content, real content of COP, I was here only yesterday and today so far, but yesterday I was already inspired by so many people, and I'm not just talking about the panelists or anyone speaking, but also people I met on the street as well. I feel like everyone's capacity is quite well built on this issue already, like even the staff. Even all the staff, like I realized everybody knows about this issue quite well, rather than just coming here to try to learn. But people are here to provide solution. They're already prepared for this, So this is like, I'm very impressed by this because it doesn't matter the age. Really young people I've met, they impress me so much, and I feel like, oh my God, what am I doing? And this is impressive for me. Yes.
Yeah, building upon that, I think one thing for sure is that COP is one of the only climate conferences that have a really huge youth movement. Because I've been to the G20 summit, I've been to the ASEAN summit, and there's just not a lot of youth inclusivity there. And so COP has been always known for youth inclusivity, but I think this COP was, the movement grew bigger, even though it was not really accessible because, you know, especially for the Global South, because Dubai is a very expensive city. So yes, a lot of Global South activists weren't able to come here, but I think we really see the youth spaces here in COP28, and it really gave an important message. And we even have one whole day now dedicated to Youth Day, which was yesterday. And we have so many pavilions dedicating to youth, women and gender as well. So I think what struck the most to me is that. And the other thing that struck to me is that I think COP is just sometimes so overwhelming because there's so many events going on at the same time, and you kind of have to sacrifice seeing, you know, whether you want to see a negotiation or just really high level panel, or you just want to go to your friend's panel to support them. So sometimes you have to kind of choose which one you need to prioritize. But I think that's also one of the lessons learned for me. But yeah, COP so far has been such a great platform for me personally to really open my perspectives towards, you know, different climate stories from all over the world, and just connect with young people and how we can collaborate more in climate action.
Thank you. I have a quick last question, and let's start from this side. As succinctly as possible, right? What is the one takeaway that you are going to get or have taken from COP? And also, what will you be doing after this as an inspiration from COP?
So I think one thing's for sure is that COP28 is that everyone is already in the same page, that we can agree that no matter, you know, you're a businessman or you're a government leader or you're just an activist yourself, or maybe even you're a staff, we all know that climate change is here and that we need to reach upon the target of 1.5 and work towards every single country's NDCs. But I think what one takeaway from me is that we do not have enough implementation that we can see from COP. We have all of these pledges, we have all of this, you know, funding that all the countries have pledged for, but we don't have the implementation yet. So I think one thing that I'm going to work towards more is implementation, specifically from the grassroots movements and the youth movement in Indonesia.
Yeah, I totally agree, because I feel like implementation is really not people are implementing things and they are having actions, but certainly not quick enough and not ambitious enough, even on the implementation side. Like, it's just not quick enough. And also, like, for me, when I'm back to my city, I'm from Hong Kong, right? People there, we're very fortunate because we don't really feel climate change that much. People will live in a city, we have a roof, we have air conditioner. So we don't really feel climate change unless there was one time this year in Hong Kong, they said it's the first time in 500 years we have the biggest flooding. And then people start to realize, oh, we are also in trouble. And so I hope this is a great warning for people back in my city to know that we should really look into this, because in Hong Kong we do have resources, but people are not aware enough of this issue. So when I'm back to Hong Kong, back to my city, what I would like to bring back from COP is that I want to let them know my experience here and how other nations are doing and what's happening to other people in the world, and what can we do so that they don't have to suffer as much, because we are the lucky ones. I know for sure we are. And also because even us as the lucky ones, we are starting to suffer too. So why are people not looking into this? And I want to have a platform for people to exchange their opinions and to collaborate from different sectors, different age range. It doesn't matter what you study, where you're from. We need to work together and bring our knowledge to the table and work something out as soon as possible, because action is what it takes. Like after COP. So I always say things happen at COP is important, but what you do after COP is what makes things turn into real reality. Yeah, thank you.
My key takeaway is that It was very powerful for me yesterday to be able to be in a meeting room with a youth speaker in front of like all these very important people and looking at the young person being listened to. And I think after COP, I want more young people to be aware of other conferences that they may be able to join and represent them and their country and their communities in a way that is very creative and very educational and innovative.
Thank you very much. I think for me, it is action builds trust. That's one of the key things I've learned here. And moving on, when I'm back to my country, I will just continue executing projects at the grassroots so that people that are susceptible to the impact of climate change are able to be included. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and for me, it is important to set priorities now because like the COP is overwhelming, and it is important to understand where to go, what to listen to, what to do. At BRICS by EA, we also understood that like building collaboration with all the youth organizations and other also companies, organizations is very important because here everyone is on the same page. We are working on the same issues, so together we can really drive forward the agenda and achieve the goals that we have set, the governments have set, and that we see as important. So set priorities and collaborate.
Thank you so much. Seems like this is the end of the panel. I think moving forward, we can all agree that action is key here post-conference to allow us to move beyond simply just words and, pursue aspirations fully. And also take in mind local communities, grassroots movements in whatever we do. And that youth is a very important community of change. So thank you so much to our panelists for this amazing panel. And wishing you all a wonderful rest of the time at COP and looking forward to see all of us driving further changes along the line. Thank you. Please give a round of a hand to our panelists.
Yeah. Thank you so much, all the youth.